got to get a plug here from Colorado Ski Country, world-class skiing and wonderful hiking and exploring. But on the challenge side, it's significant. The new world economy has reduced the flexibility of both the private as well as the public sector to spend much in the area of tourism. We have significant financial challenges, obviously. There's growing domestic advertising and tourism competition. There's more international destinations. Obviously, we have aging demographics, which to some extent are more attracted to going to a place like Florida as opposed to coming and hiking in the mountains. And it's a reality that we need to be somewhat concerned by. And then also we have the shorter vacations. You possibly have heard about just in the last several days. We're one of the few industrialized nations where the number of tourism days is declining and all of the other countries are going the other direction. So increasingly we have to be able to market for the 3- and 4-day vacation where perhaps some markets are not going to be able to be quite as competitive because they don't have the accessibility that we have. Which brings us back around to the fact that I think that Colorado benefits from some world-class tourism options. This happens to be the new gondola at Telluride, which is easier to get to from Los Angeles than it is from Denver. But if you've never been there, I would strongly recommend it because you can actually take the gondola to and from your parking lot. You don't have to pay to ride the gondola. It's used as mass transportation effectively within the village, and of course the vistas are just fantastic. And that's a very broad brush about the history of Colorado tourism. I think that it's generally pretty healthy currently. Obviously, we've got some challenges financially, but I think that you should be very proud of the quality of the Denver Convention Group, the statewide tourism effort. Over the course of the last 20 to 25 years, I think governors of both political stripe have recognized the value of tourism, and I would hope that you would continue to see the value of trying to attract people that come, spend their money, and leave, as opposed to coming and causing a disadvantage on our tax rolls, because these are effectively some of the best ways to keep our taxes low. With that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions, or if any of you that know perhaps more about this than I do want to disagree with anything, I'd be more than happy to hear that. Henry?
John, how much does the $364 per family have to be raised in order to get the first-class network? And how many jobs will that create in the state of Colorado?
Well, the 364, I mean, just to kind of put it on a micro level, that's the kind of money per family that the family from Texas or a family from New York or a family from Utah spends when they come to visit here. My sense of it is that if we can hold the current level of support that we have from the legislature, as well as some of the local support that we have out of sales tax, for example, out of Visit Denver, etc., I think we're in pretty good shape. But I would also tell you that there are all kinds of studies that would suggest that if we were to go back to the tourism tax, which we had in the early 80s, that even that 1/10 to 1% sales tax increase, each increment of that would be well worth the money that we would spend. I think the political reality, however, is that that's not going to happen, particularly in this kind of economy. I don't believe that, if I recall correctly, the tourism tax was on the ballot 2 years after the Tabor Amendment, and I believe the then Governor Romer did not support the tourism tax extension, and that was one of the reasons that it was not, extended. And I consider Governor Romer to be a friend, but there's a bifurcation in the community. Some people feel that they don't want any more bodies on the roads on the way to Winter Park or Telluride or wherever. And on the other hand, they don't necessarily agree with the subsidy that is brought to the state by the tourists. My sense is that we ought to probably continue the kind of program that Governor Owens and subsequently Governor Ritter and now Governor Hickenlooper have supported, in spite of the dramatic difficulties in balancing the budget, because the dollars being spent in tourism do in fact come back multiple-fold, where spending money on prisons perhaps do not have that kind of return. Yes, sir.
Do you have any insight into the impact of the stock show?
Well, stock show does, in fact, need to find a new home. They are landlocked. I think that in order for us to compete with Oklahoma City and Dallas and Las Vegas and other venues such as that the Globeville location probably does not have a long-term history. On the other hand, I think it's going to be very, very difficult to run a campaign where the Denver citizen is asked to support losing what they consider to be a significant asset. And I'm hopeful that perhaps the Aurora interests, the Gaylord interests, and the National Western Stock Show interests can come up with some kind of a common ground that maybe involves utilizing some of Denver's property in proximity to Aurora's property so that we don't lose revenues for Denver, but I think we do need to move the National Western Stock Show sometime in the next decade. I'm really not as involved in that personally as perhaps I should be, but I really believe that the National Western Stock Show, as you saw going back 11 years, is a fantastic amenity that reaches out to a population of people that don't necessarily ski, that don't necessarily come here for Bronco games, that don't necessarily come here to go fly fishing. And I think that it's kind of a pillar of our history. And I think we need to do all that we can to not only hold on to the National Western Stock Show, but I think we need to allow it to expand. One of the things that I have a lot of respect for the Gaylord interests, in Nashville, Bayonne, Brockmore, etc. I could see the National Western Stock Show at some point in time, particularly in the summertime, offering nightly rodeos out near the airport, not unlike what communities like Cody, Wyoming do currently. And I think that Western attitude that maybe would reach out to some of our fairs would be a huge tourism attraction. But I think it's going to be a tough sell, and I look forward to Mayor Hancock and Mayor Tower and whoever is the new mayor of Aurora coming up with a strategy that's going to be acceptable to Joe Sixpack, who's basically saying, why am I voting for something that's going to cost me money? Yes, ma'am.
A follow-up question. Maybe I haven't been reading the newspaper close enough, but I'm puzzled as to why it's been set up for Denver people to vote to move to Aurora and not Aurora people to vote to move to Aurora.
Well, I think it's a little bit like the DIA discussion that occurred 15 years ago. If you'll recall, we first of all had to get Adams County to do an annexation of the land on which DIA currently sits. And then we had to have the city and county of Denver vote because it was in the county. And I believe that there's going to be perhaps two different votes, one for Aurora and one for Denver. But I could be mistaken on that. I think that you're dealing with some annexation issues potentially that relate to that kind of gooseneck addition to Denver that occurred 15 years ago. And I don't know exactly, I'm not an attorney, but I believe that there very possibly need to be two votes.
Other questions?
Yes, sir.
To what extent is I-70 a liability for our tourism?
I think I-70 is our biggest liability in the state. I mean, it's a huge liability. I don't need to be on a soapbox here, but there's no reason to ski in Utah if it's not easier to get to the ski areas in Utah than it is in Colorado. There's no reason to ski in Reno, Nevada, or not for the fact that it's easier to get to the ski areas than on I-70. And I was in Crested Butte this weekend, and there are times in the wintertime that even though it's a 4-hour drive to Crested Butte on Highway 285, that it's a shorter trip than driving to Copper Mountain on I-70. And I'm hopeful that our elected officials will, whether it's a toll road, whether it's additional tunnels, it's a huge negative. And that's one of the reasons that we have a lot of these regional airports. A lot of people fly into Eagle County Airport. A lot of people now fly into Montrose, Telluride,